Your research question is the central question you're going to seek to answer with your research. And it sounds simple, but you actually need to work on it. There's a development process, kind of a funneling process that you need to go through. And so it starts with your general topic. And here's, you got to come up, this is where you start. You say, I want to do my paper, or I want to do my research on, and you finish that sentence. And that's your general topic. And that's where most people start. The next thing you need to do is you look at the literature, you familiarize yourself with it, see what's out there, and you identify your research aim, right? You say, what exactly do I want to explain here, right? So you're looking at China's Belt Road Initiative. What Okay, great. What do you want to explain about it? Well, how is it going to affect South China Sea? Or is it creating dependency in Latin America, right? I mean, and so you're getting to a kind of narrowing here, and you're also identifying the why of the research, right? What's the purpose of the research? And I often say you're identifying your dependent variable, the thing you want to explain. So that's the first step. Then you keep going on the literature, right? The big takeaway is that you're engaging with the literature, you're reading the literature, and once you decide, all right, this is what I want to research, you then define your literature is now defined as a literature relevant to that question. And you go and you do a serious survey of the literature and you critically assess it to figure out what are the research gaps, right? Is there something that hasn't been done, or is there a potential to expand that? And so you want to do a little research on the type of research gaps. That's a separate video. But the key thing is you need to have those gaps identified to identify an empirical question, that is a question that can be answered by looking at data, that is usually expressed in terms of the relationship between two variables, and you need to have it needs to be rooted in the literature. So it takes some work in terms of reviewing the literature in order to say, all right, here's the question we need to answer to take the literature forward. So that's one of the key takeaways. Now, just a couple related terms to go in here. A thesis, right? And you'll hear people talk about thesis statements, and some people will put this right up front, right? But it may not be up front. It might be up front in a paper. It's not necessarily up front in the process, because a thesis is a theoretical answer to your research question, right? If you've got a dependent variable, a thesis would say, hey, here's the independent variable, the thing that explains it, right? And now, not all people use the term thesis. Most often, we just talk about theory, right? But this is related to the research question, and I think it's subordinate to the research question because it is a proposed answer. And in social science, we very often are testing theoretical answers to questions, right? And so a thesis, that's what a thesis is. There's also a hypothesis, hypothesis, and this is an expected observation or correlation in data based off of theory. In other words, if the thesis is right, this is what we should see out there. So those terms sometimes get confused with the research question, and sometimes students start out saying, well, my hypothesis is, and I'm like, da, 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 da. That we're going to deal with hypotheses. We're going to develop those in the research design phase, which comes after you identify the research question. So put a pin in that. But this is overall where you're going, and this is the process you go through to develop a research question, and it's very important. Key takeaway, you need to start surveying the literature. You need to research the question in order to pose the question.